Woman removes painting varnish, uncovers husband's 50-year-old secret. Charlotte and John shared their lives together for 50 long years before John sadly passed away. They raised 2 wonderful children together and lived a modest life full of happy memories. Charlotte loved John deeply and was heartbroken when he passed. He was good to her, but there was hardly ever a problem that they wouldn't manage to resolve throughout all their years of marriage. But there was one thing that lingered in the background of their relationship, one thing that the couple constantly struggled with. He never talked much about his family and had some odd quirks. Charlotte hoped that as the years passed, he would open up, but he continued to be private even with his wife. It was a trait that caused many problems between them up until his final hours. John would often come home late from work without having a good explanation as to where he was. "Don't worry," he'd say, "I wasn't with anyone, just know that I'm not doing wrong by you." Charlotte felt like she had no choice but to believe him. But it had everything to do with her. Apart from his mysterious outings, John also had a press in their bedroom wardrobe that he always kept locked. Charlotte tried numerous times to open it, but she never managed. She also trusted him enough not to push him. She just never thought he'd tell her too late. Before John passed, he gave Charlotte a painting and told her to never give it away to anyone. He told her it was extremely valuable and to look closely at it. Charlotte wondered why he thought she'd care about such a painting at a moment like this. She took the painting obediently and smiled gently. After all the years this painting hung in their house, she never knew he cared this much about it. But there was a reason. The painting didn't look like anything special. It certainly wasn't any kind of antique or masterpiece. After John passed, Charlotte was devastated. She had her children to comfort her, but they were all grown up and living away from home. Charlotte was left with her thoughts, but one thing kept returning to her mind. The painting. She stared at it as she recalled what he had said to her about it. He told her such a cryptic message about it, but she didn't understand him. Why did he always talk in riddles with her? Her eyes squinting at the painting as she repeated her words, "Look closer." Charlotte felt like he had given her a final task as his wife. Charlotte took the painting off the hook on the wall, carefully put it in a bag and got into her car. She was going to solve this riddle no matter what it took. When Charlotte gave the painting to an art assessor, she was told exactly what she had expected. It was worthless. "Still, are you sure? Can you look at it again?" Her late husband told her it was valuable. If it wasn't, why would he say that? Returning home with the painting, Charlotte felt deflated, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. There was a chance that man was wrong, so she called a friend. Her friend Tony was an amateur art restorer. He agreed to take a look at it and give her a second opinion. Within a moment's notice, Charlotte was at his house with the painting. She told him what the previous art assessor had said to her and explained that it just didn't make sense. There had to have been something special about this painting. It was too out of character for John to say something like that in his last breaths and not mean it. It wasn't long before Tony realized that the painting had an unusually thick layer of varnish on top of an already unusually thick layer of paint. He looked closer at the painting and carefully studied the curvature of the brush strokes, traced the paint lightly with his microscope until he noticed that something definitely wasn't right. He grabbed his blue light torchlight and shined it all over the problematic area. Charlotte was waiting anxiously in the living room. There were abrupt rises in the paint, where it wouldn't occur naturally. Something was definitely hiding underneath. Tony called Charlotte to come over and look at what he discovered. Then he slowly and meticulously started to break through the paint. Being careful not to cause too much damage, Charlotte watched in amazement as a small obscure piece of paper came into view. Tony carefully freed it from the painting. On the front was Charlotte's name written in her late husband's handwriting. Her face went pale. Charlotte reached for the piece of paper and turned it around. Her husband had written an address she recognized and a code. The address belonged to a local bank. On the drive to the bank, Charlotte couldn't help but think about what he had planned. Through her confusion and anger, her eyes started to swell as her heart began to break again in his absence. When Charlotte asked an employee at the bank for help and showed him the note, his reaction took her by surprise. He stumbled onto his feet and asked her to follow him. When he took her into the back towards a high-security room, she thought she was in trouble. But what he led her to was a big safe in the center of the marble-laced room. The employee asked her to place her finger on the safe scanner and a green light appeared. Engraved on a silver plate beside the safe was her late husband's name. The safe door opened and there before her eyes lay another note addressed to her name. The tears flowed steadily as Charlotte recognized her late husband's handwriting. It was one of the most heartfelt letters she'd ever received from him. As she read, all the secrets he had kept from her for years finally came bubbling to the surface. First, John explained the safe and why the insane amount of money it contained was in his possession. John worked as a carpenter, but he also had another job, his real job that Charlotte had no idea about. Charlotte knew that John had a wealthy uncle who was a renowned painter, but she thought all his paintings had already been sold. That wasn't the case. John's uncle left his estate to John. His inheritance included his entire work of paintings. Paintings that John continued to auction and take care of on the side of his carpenter career. The money was partly his inheritance. He explained that this was the reason behind all the secrecy she had to endure.